Hello, and welcome to this Planning and Development Council meeting of the Town of Oakville. It's 3rd of February, 2025. And Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets for this evening?
No, we do not.
Well, I'm sure that the missing counselor will join us in progress. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, I'm not seeing any. Would two of you like to move and second us into Committee of the Whole? Councillor Longo and Councillor Adams, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The motion carries. And Council, you have 3 consent items in the public, and you have 1 consent item that's confidential. I believe that you have all the information you need on the confidential consent item, and so I'm looking for a motion for all of the consent items from Councillor McNeice and Councillor Adams. Am I right? Thank you. Council, are there any objections? Councillor Adams.
I have no objection. I just wanted to thank our staff and Madame for their work on 4.3. The work that they've done has been helpful, and I think it's improved the application.
Yes.
Councillor Natalia and I have spent a great deal of time meeting with staff and the applicant to make sure that that happened satisfactorily. So thank you.
So that only took, what, an extra month or 2? Excellent. Okay. I'm glad that the results are satisfactory to everybody, and I'm glad those things have passed. And that brings us to 5.1, the confidential, let's see. So we've taken care of the confidential labor, no, we haven't. Yes, we did. Okay, so the public motion that's just been carried for the public to understand is that Council has ratified the Memorandum of Agreement with Unifor Local 1256 dated January 23rd, and the agreement is going to be executed in accordance with Bylaw 2013-57. That brings us to our public hearing items. So tonight we have 3 opportunities to go through our public meeting report process and a statutory public meeting. So I want to speak first about item 6.2 and 6.3. These are public meetings, and the purpose of these meetings is to collect the issues that we want staff to work on. This meeting is not the one where you need to offer an argument about it. All you have to do is list the issue that you want dealt with, and it will duly be dealt with by staff. And then when it comes back, there'll be lots of opportunity for debate or discussion or even thanks, because sometimes you get what you ask for. And so that brings us now to the public hearing item. This is the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District statutory public meeting. We have a presentation from Susan Schappert, and we have a registered delegation from the Oakville Residents Association. And we're going to turn first to the presentation, then we'll have the delegation. And I'll just say, for the benefit of the public who may not know this, Oakville has always been a leader in the preservation of built and natural heritage and cultural heritage. And this represents a required update to our original first Heritage Conservation District. Ms. Schappert, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So let's launch straight into our update. As the Mayor noted, the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District is not new. It has been in place since Council approved it in 1981, and then it received formal approval from the Ontario Municipal Board, as was required at the time in 1982. And so at that point in time, the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District Plan and Guidelines was adopted, and it has been managing change within the Old Oakville District since that time. So we're very due for an update, and we actually began this planning process back in 2021. There are 2 major components to update a heritage conservation district or to create one. One is a study, and the next is the plan and guidelines. And so we spent quite a lot of time working with the community and our consulting team to create that district study, which Council approved in February of 2024, and then directed staff to begin work on the district plan and guidelines, which are the tools to manage change in the area. The first draft of our plan and guidelines was released for public comment in May of last year, and the current draft that's before you this evening was released in December so that we were able to provide as much time as possible for the public to have access to the document because it is a little bit lengthy. Just as a refresher, the contents of the study looked at all of the background information that you need to set up so that you can actually create or justify the creation of a heritage conservation district. So it provided all of the detailed history, some very in-depth descriptions of the built heritage character in terms of architectural features, styles, dates of construction. But I think the biggest and best thing that came out of that study was the replacement of what we had in the 1982 plan, which was a block analysis with character areas that still recognized the unique and special kind of corners and areas of this heritage district, while also providing a link to the overall heritage area. That study was looking forward to the creation of the Heritage District Plan, and so it did have some recommendations on what the plan should include. And the other significant portion of the study was the creation of an inventory sheet for each individual property in the area. So the contents of the district plan that's been available for public review since December sets out actually 9 different sections. These are required generally to meet the requirements of the Ontario Heritage Act. So we have our general introduction, the statement of cultural heritage value or interest for the Heritage District. And I know Council has seen a lot of individual heritage properties over the past year or so. This is especially important in the context of a heritage conservation district because we're looking at so many different properties at once to set up the values of why the whole area is important, and then to identify those heritage attributes that collectively combine to create that value. We have the objectives of the Heritage Conservation District in terms of conservation of cultural heritage resources, an examination of the municipal policy framework that we're working within. But the big thing, the tool that will be the most used in this document is Section 5, which is the guidelines for managing change. And I'll go over that in a little bit on the next slides. Section 6 is the exempt alterations, so the things that you can do in a heritage district without requiring heritage permit approval. And we've also introduced a heritage conservation district review process in order to ensure that we don't have to do a complete study and plan next time we want to make changes. Sections 8 and 9 are the glossary and bibliography and sources for the document. So, Section 5. This is an area that we've spent an awful lot of time working on, both with the consultants and within the staff team, and especially with our community partners. So those character areas that I mentioned that were part of the Heritage Conservation District study have been brought into the Heritage District Plan, and they form an important part of the decision-making process. We have then divided Section 5 into smaller subsections to look at alterations to contributing properties, separate from additions, because additions are very significant changes, whereas alterations may be minor. Contributing properties are properties that have been identified in the district plan as having cultural heritage value, so they actually have heritage attributes themselves that create the value of the Heritage Conservation District. And we have contributing properties and non-contributing properties. So non-contributing properties would be those that were constructed throughout maybe the 1960s and onwards. And there are different guidelines for those types of properties, as we are not looking to create a false sense of heritage, but rather to manage change so that future projects and development work well, are compatible and sympathetic with the existing heritage structures in the area. We have sections on new development for both primary structures, and with recent provincial tools, we thought it wise to add another section about detached additional residential units to ensure that we were making sure that our heritage district wouldn't be left open to any loopholes. And of course, we have landscape and site guidelines for both publicly and privately owned lands, because it is not just buildings that contribute to the cultural heritage value of a district. Our trees, our parks, our pathways, road systems, all of these things contribute as well. The character areas, just as a refresher, have been broken into 5 different areas, and there's also actually a streetscape overlay as well, and that's the hatched area on that map. And the character areas allow us to really drill down into the guidelines to make sure that we're providing appropriate content to conserve the unique characteristics of each one of those areas. So we're here tonight, obviously, to fulfill the statutory requirements to create a heritage conservation district and to adopt a district plan. The consultation required under the Ontario Heritage Act states that we need to have timely release of information to the public, which we have done. We have met all of our deadlines for notification, and actually, as I noted, provided the plan well in advance. Holding our statutory public meeting this evening, and then consulting with the Municipal Heritage Committee, which would be a future step. We did provide the required 20 days notice set out by the Ontario Heritage Act, and we look forward to receiving representations and submissions this evening, although I certainly have received some feedback via email and phone calls over the past few weeks, which is wonderful. The last thing I just want to touch on in the process to update Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District is the engagement piece, because we have gone certainly well out of our way to ensure that our stakeholders are engaged and consulted on everything that we've done for both the Heritage Conservation District study as well as the drafting of the new plan and guidelines. And so you can see here that we've had an awful lot of stakeholder meetings. And we've had 4 public information meetings held in a less formal setting than council. So those have actually been held usually in downtown Oakville at one of our community churches, which is closer for the neighborhood to access. And we've had some excellent participation and public feedback throughout those meetings as well. We've also been providing regular updates to the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee just on the status and progress reports. You may also, of course, remember that we've been before Planning and Development Council a few times, both with the study and with an update on our process. And I'd just like to take this moment to thank everyone who has been involved in this process, from members of council. Our Ward 3 councillors have been very supportive, and the volunteers within the community who have provided so much of their time and effort, especially the Heritage Subcommittee of the Oakville Lakeside Residents Association and the Oakville Historical Society. So the recommendation before you tonight simply is that the report be received and that comments from the public with respect to the district plan be received, and that staff considers such comments as may be provided by council as well. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shepherd. Councillor Chisholm will oblige you with the first question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Susan, I don't know what to say with the amount of work that your department's been doing with respect to the designations and also with the reports. It's only a question, and maybe it's just an oversight, but reading the report, I don't see you as acknowledged as part of the author of this report. Is that just an oversight, or because you're not named in the report?
Generally speaking, we I believe I'm included as the personnel, but the general author of the report is considered to be the Planning and Development Services Department. So I believe I'm in there on the second page under personnel, but as are my other colleagues and our consulting team too.
I think you're being a little bit bashful on this one, Susan. The reality it is, you've done so much work on our heritage. It has to be acknowledged. So I'm asking, requesting through your worship, the council to make sure we acknowledge Susan on the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Haslett-Teal.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Susan, as an individual who's probably always relies on Councillor Giddings and Councillor Duddock for insight into heritage, you have made it much, much easier for an average individual to understand the importance of the Oakville Heritage District, how to live and make change if you wish to your home. The actual sections on best practices, the the pics that show the different elements. Kudos to you. It really is a first-class piece of work. And while I'm sure there's feedback coming, my only question tonight is, will that correspondence be in the documents we see when you bring it back for a final decision?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the correspondence that we receive will be attached to the next staff report that council sees. But of course, we will be, trying to address all of those comments as well in the actual document. We've received some really helpful feedback since we published this draft in December, and I'm quite confident that we can accommodate pretty much all of it because it's been very helpful. The community has been so active in this process in letting us know what they need, that they've actually, they've certainly strengthened this document, and I really just have to thank them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk, would you call the registered delegations?
Anita McKay.
Welcome, Ms. McKay. We look forward to your information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to councillors. I'm here with my colleague Jane Hockrig, who is on our Oakville Lakeside Residents Association Heritage Sub-Working Committee. Just let me introduce myself. I am Anita Mackey. I live at 64 Navy Street in the Heritage District. I'm a member of the board of the OLRA and chair of the Heritage Working Group. And Jane is a former board member, past president of the OLRA, and has been a dedicated volunteer on our Heritage Working Group. So we're here tonight on behalf of the OLRA board, and we're authorized to speak. This public meeting is a critical milestone on a journey to update this Heritage District plan, which was in need of updating. Over the last 3 years, the OLRA has been a very active stakeholder, working with the town of Oakville and other key stakeholders to get it right. From the very outset, we've been committed to a collaborative partnership approach to ensure that the detailed necessary work, the analysis, the best heritage practices were incorporated into the work so that we would have a strong and defensible Old Oakville Heritage District Plan and guidelines, and a plan that protects this important cultural heritage landscape that evolved over time at the 19th and early 20th century built form and its various varied cohesive landscape. And we want to in particular to thank Sue Shepard for having been so open with us and facilitating our input, and for the incredible hard work that she has put into this. So we echo everybody's comments on how Sue has been so important to this process. And overall, we are really pleased with the progress that has been made on the plan to date. And we have invested lots of time over 2024 to work with the staff through this drafting process of the guidelines themselves. And I'll pass it over to Jane Hockrig, who will just give us, we have a couple of comments that we have submitted in writing, but that we just want to highlight here tonight, and then we'll have a small conclusion. But we won't take much time.
So in terms of the draft plan before you tonight, OLRA formally submitted a document to the town last week, and we're in the process of reviewing it in detail with Sue. Our expectation is that this input will be incorporated into the updated version that we believe is scheduled for Heritage Oakville at the end of February. We did want to raise a specific area associated with the guidelines for managing change that we feel strongly needs to be revised in order to provide appropriate protections, particularly associated with the additions to contributing properties and potentially to non-contributing properties. Scale, height, and massing are critical factors that impact the look and the feel of a built structure, significantly contributing to the built structure's character, but also the character of the area, sub-areas, and the district overall. Heritage conservation best practice suggests that additions should be subordinate to the heritage building in size, scale, and detailing. Typically, that translates to addition heights that are slightly lower or at the same height as the original heritage building. Changes to the roof line that are higher are seen as having the potential to significantly alter the character of a building and its contribution to the streetscape. This best practice for height additions is not only seen in many other jurisdictions, but has also been in practice in the Old Oakville Heritage District for decades. As a result, we feel strongly that this direction needs to continue in the updated plan and have provided suggestions to Sue for wording changes to reflect that.
As Jane mentioned, scale, height, and massing are critical factors to contribute to the character of the area, and they are factors that can easily detract and negatively impact the character of the area. And we have a lot of non-contributing properties that we have to make sure they're done at the right mass, scale, and height. We also recognize the Heritage District Plan, supported by the Heritage District Study, is a part of a town's policy framework, and it sets out the overall vision and direction associated with protecting and preserving the character. And as such, it's critical that the other municipal planning tools and policies that the town has to support the realization of this plan should be put in place. And for that reason, OLRA has gone on record to support the work that's been underway by the town staff to consider specific zoning for heritage districts that would ensure effective alignment with our heritage guidelines, particularly as it relates to height, scale, mass, and front and side yard setbacks. In closing, we're really pleased with the progress that's been made to date, and we think this draft with these further changes will be a sound and defensible plan and an important tool to guide and manage change and protect and conserve this very important place, not only for today, but for generations to come. And we thank you.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing all of that. Councillor Dudek and Councillor Giddings have questions or comments for you. Councillor Dudek.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. First of all, thank you ever so much for all the work that you've done on this project. Unbelievable, like you always do, thorough. And just for the benefit rather of some of my colleagues around the table, you have compiled a huge amount of research that went into a lot of the recommendations, and you dovetailed quite beautifully with staff, from what I understand. The one thing I think I heard more than anything at the onset, not only that it was badly in need of updating, was that there needed to be clarity in terms of what is and isn't permitted and what is and isn't acceptable, especially, as you say, with additions, new builds, and some of the older ones. Do you feel the recommendations that you provided most recently will assist in that regard, give more clarity? Is that the objective?
Yes, exactly right. Thank you.
Okay, great. Again, thank you ever so much for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dudek covered what I was going to say there in terms of where we are in the process and in terms of the amount of effort that you and your volunteers in the OLRA have been put into this. It's certainly been a journey. We have seen you at countless numbers of heritage advisory meetings, and thanks to your efforts, maybe we won't have to do this again for another 40 years, which is what the last one took. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. Councillor Giddings, your hand is up. Can I seize on that as an invitation to move the necessary motion here, the receive and consider?
It certainly is, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any objection, Council? There being none, Councillor Giddings, thank you. Your motion is successful. Now we come to the second of the three public commentary soliciting items, and this is the one for 15 Loyalist Trail, I beg my pardon. This is an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, and Council, we have a delegate available. That is the planner, as I understand it, Bill Tam, for the applicant, and Kate Coburn is available for your questions after that. Madam Clerk, is Mr. Tam ready to go? Yes. Well then let's, oh, here he is, good. I couldn't tell whether he was online or in line. Mr. Tam, come forward, please. Make yourselves at home at the podium. It raises and lowers if you need it. And we look forward to your information. You'll assist everybody if you arrange to speak into the microphone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council and the members of the general public. My name is Bill Tam from the firm of KLM Planning. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Rowhedge Construction. Rowhedge Construction is perhaps better known by its parent developer company, Melrose Investments, and the builder, Rosehaven Homes. I believe they've done quite a lot of work within the town of Oakville, especially within this area. The applications for us tonight are for zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment, and that is to facilitate the proposed development of 40 stacked townhouse units. Next slide, please. Okay. This shows the site context. The site is outlined in red, and is located on the north side of Loyalist Trail, about 75 meters east of 6th Line. Has an area of approximately 0.65 hectares. It is vacant with no significant vegetation, and it's generally flat. In terms of surrounding context, to the north is an existing underground reservoir. To the immediate east is a woodlot. To the south are existing single detached and townhouse dwelling units, as well as retail along both sides of Burnford Road, and further to the southwest are examples of back-to-back townhouses. And immediately to the west is currently vacant, but that is the future site of a fire station. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay. This slide shows the conceptual site plan, which is on the right-hand side of your slide there. And the subject lands, along with the lands immediate to the west of the subject lands, where the fire hall will be, was originally meant to be a larger block that was to support employment uses. However, with the western half of that block being acquired by the fire department, we believe that the remaining parcel, which is the subject lands, of course, the size limits the ability to do employment uses as well as commercial uses, also because we no longer have corner exposure along 6th Line. Therefore, Rowhedge proposes to amend the town's official plan and zoning to develop the subject lands for 40 stacked townhouses and a condominium layout, which is what you see right in front of us here. There will be 5 buildings in total, and there will be 3 stories in height. Each dwelling unit will have 2 dedicated parking spaces, whereas the parent zoning bylaw only requires 1 for this type of unit, for these type of units. There will be visitor parking and bicycle parking, whereas the parent zoning bylaw requires no such parking. And there will be an at-grade outdoor amenity area in the northwest portion of this site plan. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. The subject lands are currently designated employment areas within the town's parent official plan. And this designation permits a range of manufacturing, industrial, and warehouse uses. And an amendment is sought to the parent OP to change the designation to residential areas. Similarly, these subject lands are designated employment district within the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. And again, that designated employment district, and that designation, again, permits a range of manufacturing, warehousing, and industrial uses, among other uses. An amendment to the secondary plan is sought to change the designation to transitional area to permit residential uses. I want to note that the proposed transitional area designation will be exactly the same designation that applies currently to the land south of Loyalist Trail. What is not perhaps shown on this slide is any reference to the region of Halton OP. Prior to 2021, the subject lands had an overlay designation of employment area within the regional OP. This was changed to urban area through WOPA 48. in 2021. And the urban area would have permitted a wide range of uses, including residential. It is my understanding that the town found acceptable for this change of land use designation on the regional OP. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. The subject lands are currently zoned service area employment, and this zoning category permits a range of light industrial, service establishments, office, retail, commercial schools, among other uses. And an amendment is sought to change the designation to neighborhood center, which inherently permits residential uses. Along with the designation, along with the zoning category change, is a proposed site-specific exceptions, which include permitting the stacked townhouse bout form specifically, as well as some development standards. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. This slide shows a conceptual landscape plan for the development. You'll notice that there is a landscape front yard which addresses the public realm, and that front yard facing Loyalist is not interrupted by parking spaces nor driveways. The future fire station to the immediate west is screened by vegetation and privacy fencing. I indicated before there will be an at-grade amenity area in the northwest portion of the site. Shade, tree planting, and landscaping will be provided within the site as well as around the yards. There will be no encroachment into the adjacent NHS woodlot to the east of the site. Active transportation is encouraged by having walkways which link directly to the existing sidewalk and Loyalist Trail. And I think I indicated before that bicycle parking will be provided. Can I get the next? Thank you. This conceptual rendering highlights some of the elements we just spoke about. For example, the vegetation and fencing that will shield the future fire hall. You see the parking behind the buildings. You see the landscape front yard. And you will see that this proposal uses traditional residential building materials. Can I get the next? Thank you. There was a public information meeting held on October the 8th of 2024. Public input could be summarized into 5 main points. I'll just go over those fairly quickly. The first one was a concern regarding the compatibility of the proposal to the existing residential. The massing of each of the proposed buildings, there's 5 buildings, the massing of each of the proposed buildings would be similar to some of the buildings within the neighborhood, particularly the townhouses, the retail, and the back-to-back townhouses. I indicated before that similar building materials will be used. And it is our opinion that the post-residential development would be more in character with existing residential than the currently permitted industrial uses. The second point that was raised was a preference for retail on the site. I indicated before that the loss of corner exposure on 6th line because of the fire hall acquisition renders the subject lands not ideal for retail uses. A commercial study was submitted as part of the application form, as part of the application, which concluded that the retail along Burnhamthorpe Road is adequate to serve the residents, and that report is being reviewed by town staff. Third, there was concern for parking and traffic. The development concept proposes double the parking spaces compared to what is required in the parent zoning bylaw, as well as providing visitors parking. Each of the units in the proposal will be only 2 bedrooms, and we believe this smaller size of unit will necessitate a lower requirement for parking. Now, a transportation study was also submitted as part of the application, and that's also being reviewed by the town staff. And that report advised that only minor impacts upon traffic is anticipated because of this development. Fourth, there was concern regarding the loss of privacy. Loyalist Trail serves as has a spatial separation between the proposed development and the existing residential. And that's supplemented by the landscaping in the front yard as well as the streetscaping along Loyalist. And I also want to point out that the existing zoning for the employment uses would have permitted a greater height compared to what we are proposing in 3 stories. And we believe that this would have resulted in an even greater loss of privacy used for those employment uses. Finally, there was a concern raised regarding the lack of landscaping and impact upon the NHS. I indicated before that there will be no encroachment of the NHS from our site. And in terms of landscaping, there are shade trees and landscaping shown on the concept. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. So in conclusion, the row hedge is seeking amendments to the town's official plan and secondary plan to permit residential uses. And is also seeking an amendment to the town's zoning bylaw to permit 40 stacked townhouses as well as introduce development standards. Can I get the next slide? The final slide. Thank you. This concludes my presentation for this evening. Row Hedge wishes to thank the staff for their report and look forward to working with the town to bring this project to a successful conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tam. You've elicited a few questions. We'll start with the ward councillors, Councillor Nanda, Councillor Shea, and then Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you so much for the presentation. We were at the public information meeting as well. I just had a question about the residents had several concerns, which you did present here today. Did the applicant ever consider making any changes based on what the residents' feedback was?
They felt that meaning the applicant decided that we want to hear from staff as well because we didn't really hear too much about the staff in terms of what their comments would be during the PIM. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to wait until we get a comprehensive set of comments, including from tonight, mm-hmm. before we go ahead and to address those comments as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you had stated that a study has not been completed on the commercial side as of yet for Burnham Thorpe.
It has been submitted, actually, and it's being reviewed by town staff right now.
It's being reviewed. Okay, so based on that, a commercial site could still be on the table if it's viewed that it could be beneficial for the residents.
Well, that would depend upon what the, I guess, the study would confirm. But right now, the study does confirm that the existing commercial retail on Burnham Thorpe is adequate to serve the needs of the residents. That's what it concludes right now.
And I think the applicant's only issue was with that was visibility. So if there was any kind of opportunity to have some kind of signage on the corner of Loyalist and in 6th Line, that could maybe even allow for commercial, could it not?
Well, I have to take it back.
For visibility purposes? Okay, and the rest of my comments are to staff. Should I proceed? I think for staff, to reiterate some of the residents' comments that they were concerned about, which was presented here today, is parking would be a huge issue. We know that we've had a lot of issues on Loyalist Trail, and we're doing traffic studies. And I think one of the biggest concerns was that although zoning did not require visitor parking, one of the biggest issues is with having this many units on a small property that a lot of people would still have visitors, and that's going to come out onto the streets across from Loyalist Trail and onto Loyalist Trail, which could cause a lot of traffic issues. We know that on the west side, there's eventually going to be a school there as well, which will cause some traffic issues as well. So if we could please look into that. I think number of units was an issue as well with the amount of density and not actually being able to park between units because it is all townhouses. And in the north, we already have a lot of parking issues in our developments and where people can park on the streets. So if some of those residents require parking permits, it'll probably end up on Loyalist Trail as well. That may be an issue. There's a regional issue that I would want staff to maybe look at is based on how this is designed of waste collection, because it looks like you can only go in one way and out one way, and it doesn't look like the garbage trucks are going to be able to turn around and be able to collect through the streets. I'm not sure how much of an issue that would be, but I think that that's something that we would need to look into as well. And also height. I think because there was some concern about height and some privacy issues that you had discussed earlier of whether we need that much height as well. So if we could put that in, I heard from residents again, so because a lot of the residents did not come here, these are still some concerns. So if we could look into those, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. So Councilor Nanda already touched many questions I have. Still, I'm to speak about the parking as well. So there's only 3 visitor parking is too, I think it's too, we need to get some more for this visiting parking. And just now you said all this 40 unit is only 2-bedroom unit. Is that, am I right?
Through you, Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Yes, so let's go back to Councilor Nanda's question. So staff and the applicant should just maybe can consider about to limit it the total unit, but can be make them like each unit have a larger space, then can get more people in more to general family as well. So maybe that is just the way it can reduce some density there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hazlet-Thiel.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Burton. Councillor Nanda and Councillor Shi covered much of what I wanted, but could somebody just refresh my memory about beside the applicant's property, not the fire station, but just north of it? What would be allowed from an employment use on that land?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So the lands are currently zoned FD, so future development, but they are designated for employment uses as employment district. Currently, the lands are owned by the region for their reservoir. Should the land use change at any point in the future, then the default land use would be for employment uses.
Okay, so, but for some clarity, what specific types of employment use could be put there if it would ever changed hands?
Through you, councillor, or through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, the policy framework for employment uses is quite broad. It allows for a range of manufacturing, light employment, heavier employment, office uses, supportive uses as well. But the more refined land use permissions would be through a zoning bylaw amendment. So until the zoning bylaw amendment were to come in, there are 3 zoning categories within the North Oakville bylaw that could be considered. The light employment is the predominant zone currently for the lands that have been redeveloped. SA is the subject site zoning, which allows for service area employment uses, so supportive employment uses. And then we have our general employment, which is our heavier land uses as well.
So for the list of things to be considered that being gathered, I'd like to understand the implications in regards to D6 guidelines and sensitive land uses. I believe that is also something that Councillor Nanda was trying to point out, and it is it's a future problem if this becomes residential, if we don't secure that the other side's ability to develop doesn't include lands that are employment that clearly impacts residents, and I'd hate to make the same mistake we've made in the past. So I'd appreciate if that was on the list. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Tam. We appreciate your time and your care and all the questions. We have no other registered delegations. Who would like to give the indicated motion, which is that staff receive and consider? And that is Councillor Nanda. Thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. Thank you, Councillor Nanda. And that brings us to the public meeting report for the official plan amendment application by the Rose Corporation. And our staffer, Delia McPhail, is here for questions. And we have David McKay or Mackay from MHBC Planning on behalf of the applicant. And we have Douglas McCurgan on behalf of Trafalgar Chartwell Residents Association and the group known as We Love Oakville. And we'll start with David McKay or Mackay?
Mackay.
See,
Not many people get that.
I covered all possibilities. Anyway, welcome, sir. We look forward to your information.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, members of council, my name is David Mackay. I'm a registered professional planner with MHBC representing the applicant. For anyone who's watching on the screen, if you'd like to make comments, you can call in at 905-815-6095, and the clerk will assist you with taking your delegation. Next slide. So this property is the former GE plant located on the south side of the QEW, municipally addressed as 420 South Service Road East, approximately 27.4 acres in site, mainly vacant. Most of the site was demolished in terms of the existing facility, GE facility. There is the existing heritage building in terms of the office that is prominent from South Service Road and the QEW that remains on the site. And currently the site is being used for temporary outdoor storage of shipping containers and motor vehicles. Next slide. So the proposal for you today, what we are looking at a mixed-use development, fairly intense, noting that this is in a major transit station area. We did look to the documents that the town has produced to date, and we are incorporating a number of the policies and the structural components that are in those plans. And as you can see on the screen, that includes the extension of east-west and north-south streets through the block, including provision for the overpass that's planned over the QEW and the underpass underneath the CN rail line. In terms of the site itself, we are looking at a mixture of buildings that will be built out over time. Looking at our application, we've proposed between 30 and 48 stories in terms of the buildings in a variety of different areas to provide some visual interest from afar. And we've really focused on the connectivity on the site. You can see that in the dark purple is non-residential areas, so retail service uses along the collector roads, the main spine through the site. We do have some residential components that are on the other components of the various streets. And we have incorporated a number of elements in terms of porosity through the site, both in terms of private open spaces, but also a significant public park, just under 5 acres, about 4.62 acres, that's located in green on the site. Good, next slide. So as you can see on this slide, this is a perspective looking north from an aerial view. It is a very intense urban site that we're looking at. A number of high-rise buildings to be built out over time. The amount of development on the site will take that a good length of time. We have incorporated the public park as shown in the town's plans. And to the bottom of the screen, it's like right now a parking lot, but that would be the future school site on the adjacent property. So we are having ongoing discussions with the school boards with regards to how that interfaces with the site and the future park. As I said, along the grade, we will be incorporating residential units, but also a number of retail units and other non-residential units to provide for that activity at grade to really enliven this site. And we think that will happen gradually over time, but we're providing for the provision for it in the official plan policies that we're proposing. In terms of the urban design components, we're looking at 2 to 4 story podiums, and then the tower component on top of that. We are proposing in this application 30-meter separation distance between the towers, which staff are suggesting up to 25 stories, and above that they're talking about 35 meters, but 30 meters is very generous and is well in line with the various guidelines that the town has implemented in the past. Next slide. So in terms of the policies, obviously the new Midtown plan has not been adopted, so we do need an official plan amendment to redesignate these lands from employment as identified previously to allow for the mixed-use development to occur. Next slide. and that's, is in line with the vision by, that has been produced to date in the various versions of the official plan for overall Midtown. With regards to zoning, we're not there yet. The lands are zoned for employment purposes, including that temporary use I'd mentioned before. Obviously, that would change to a mixed-use zone, and that would be subject to a future application along with draft plan of subdivision, as well as site plans approval for each of the various blocks. So those are future things that we're going to come back to council on as we go through the process. Next slide. One of the key items that we've looked at is sustainability on a broad basis at the official plan level. So obviously there's the transit-oriented development, compact built form, incorporating reduced parking ratios that are appropriate for a transit-oriented development, but also in looking at forward thinking on the built form that will be teased out as we get through the site plan process for the site. So that includes energy efficiency to meet the building code or exceed the building code, water conservation measures, incorporating bike facilities and car share and EV parking as part of the development. Obviously, a lot of green space and new trees that will be created as the park and the streetscape gets developed, and those will be drought-tolerant type of species. And again, we're going to be working with staff and council as we move this project forward over the number of years. And we'd also incorporate other transportation demand measures like real-time transportation screens in the lobbies of the buildings, again, to facilitate public transit movement. Next slide. We did have a public meeting in October. 4 members of the public attended. It was mainly focused on the questions coming out. We're dealing with the infrastructure funding for the various pieces for this proposal, general timing of construction and how it would proceed, and we've incorporated that into the documents that we've submitted to date with this application. Next slide. So overall, we are looking forward to working with town council and town staff to create a really exciting visionary project that will support Midtown, looking at high-quality public realm, sustainability and resilience, connectivity and accessibility for the community, excellence in the architecture, and obviously transit-supportive development to support the transit infrastructure investments that have occurred and will occur in the future as part of this the Midtown area. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council or the public may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mackay. There are questions. Councillor Haslett-Deal and then Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you for your presentation. It was disappointing that your public meeting was on a similar night that others had conflicts, because I can assure you the public has a great deal of interest in your application, and perhaps an additional meeting could be considered. In terms of the application, did you have an opportunity to attend the TOC meeting or listen to the TOC meeting that occurred a week ago at council?
I did not attend that meeting, but I did attend the Midtown OPA meeting, I think it was the week before, to listen to those comments.
Okay. So when you consider the public concern with a responsible level of density, something that is more appropriate for the amount of land that we have and some of the constraints, has there been any consideration of adjustments to what you initially proposed and have shared tonight? Are you considering changes that would bring it more in line with the new OPA?
I'm sure that we'll have continuing discussions over the next few months with council and staff. Obviously, the application we put forward, we think represents good planning and is in the public interest, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. And so we're open to further discussions and seeing what we can come up with to come up with a yes for everybody. So yes, the answer is we could consider changes to the proposal as we gather more information. So
that is great to hear, and be happy to have further discussions with you. In terms of the ground floor level, you mentioned retail along the main corridor. What are there any sections where you would have different types of units than the 1 or 2 bedroom condos?
Yes, so we're proposing 10% of the units to be 3 bedrooms. We're obviously, this is an OPA level, it's not a defined zoning level or site plan. But we anticipate that there will be townhouse units built into the podium that will have direct access onto the various streets. One of the issues that we've got with this site is the grade differential north-south to work from an overpass condition over the QEW to an underpass condition underneath. So what it does is it does allow for some very creative architectural and design elements that can be incorporated into these buildings, and we're still working through those details with staff. Obviously, we've done our best to say what has to happen from a geometric perspective, and we have to tease down into those details. But we think that can create a variety of different unit types, both ground-related in the podium as well as I mentioned, the retail and commercial components. It does also offer the opportunity for above-grade parking to be built into the portions on the north side of the site as the interchange or the flyover occurs, so that that area, even though it's above grade, is actually level with the ground and does have a good built form and isn't blank walls. So we're going to work through a lot of those details as we move through this process.
Thank you for sharing some of that detail, because it does reflect some of the challenges the site might have. In terms of it's a brownfield site because it was a GE, and you've got some details in your application about needs for remediation. Is there anything that you can flag tonight that it should be of concern to the public?
I don't think so. In terms of concerns to the general public, a lot of work has been done in the past by GE previously to our client purchasing the site, and we'll continue to work with town staff on the remediation. And we do have to meet the standards of the province relative to residential development, and that includes for the park site as well as the road. So that's an ongoing work program that needs to occur over an extended period of time. But there's no big red flags jumping out. No one's, glowing as they walk across the site or anything like that.
Okay. I thought we'd make sure that was out there. I just have 2 more, and I'll leave it to my colleagues. One is you're proposing the park is a phase 3. And I do recall having a conversation with Mr. Reisman about how important it was for concurrently developing that park. So is that one of the opportunities that we can have further discussions on?
Yes, and I think that's part of the ongoing discussions as well with the school board, because they are immediately adjacent to the site. That's where it's being shown in the plans. So there is ongoing discussions about the park size, the usage, and certainly the timing is part of that that we could talk to staff about and yourselves.
Thank you. Mayor Burton, I may have some later, but I'll leave it to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton. Thank you very much, Mr. Mackay. Appreciate you for coming forward. I'm trying to just understand numbers. So you're going to have 5,849 square meters of commercial. Do you have any ballpark idea how many people that would have a job they could go to work at this point?
It depends. So that's about, rough math, about 65,000 square feet. Typically on retail, it's about 1 job for every 400 square feet. So you're looking at 200 to 300 jobs, depending on the users and depending on the size. So some users obviously are more intensive in terms of employment and job creation, while others are lower. But that's our initial estimates based on providing for a fine-grained retail environment. Obviously, if we can get some larger users like a food store, that would obviously bump those numbers up, and obviously the job creations that go with it. But again, we're dealing at an OP level, so it's a lot of it is still up in the air in terms of the final tenanting of those buildings.
So, and for residential units, from what I saw, it was 6,964 units. And if you say on average, say 2 people per unit, that's 13,928 people. Is that reasonable? Am I accurate, pretty accurate on that?
Yes, that sounds about right.
So the whole site is 11.05 hectares. And when I looked at the park at the southwest corner, it's only 1.65 hectares. Does that make sense?
Well, that's the requirement under the Planning Act to provide for a park. We also have an additional area of land that could potentially be turned into park or contributed as part of the school site adjacent.
So yeah, okay, so that's very, I appreciate what you're saying. So the 15% is basically what the province dictates. This is what you're allowed to do.
That's correct. Yes.
And when you do the calculation, if everybody walks out of their unit and goes down to the park, how many square meters do you think they have to stand on?
Well,
I did the calculation.
Sure.
It's 1.2 meters is all every resident would have to stand on. Like it blew me away when you start realizing that 15% is all you have to give. And with the numbers you've got there, like I just think, do you think that's reasonable? And do you think maybe that could be increased in size, the parkland at least, and cut down the number of stories of buildings? Because I know you said it's only 30 to 48 buildings. You've only got one 30-story and 535, and then from then 40's got 3, 42's got 2, 45's got 3 buildings, and another 48's got another 2 buildings. Like it's pretty heavily weighted on the top end of the 40 size. So is in your opinion as a professional, is that proper, or do you think it could be a little bit tight?
I think for an urban location supporting transit, I think it is appropriate. I've done a number of developments in the downtown cores, including the Vaughan Metropolitan Center as an example, where we have similar numbers, if not higher, in terms of density. In terms of the parkland, that is appropriate numbers. Could it increase? That's something that's a discussion point that has to occur with my client as we go through this process.
Well, where you just referenced, that was a subway, correct? Not a GO train.
It is a subway, yes, that is correct.
Do you not see any difference between subways and GO trains?
I
in your
do.
professional opinion?
I do, but I also realize that they are transit oriented, and that's why, as I said, in the Vaughan Metropolitan Center, you're talking 65, 70-story buildings with significantly more density than what is proposed on this site. So there is a differential that we're talking about.
I appreciate the information you provided, and I hope you can, as you go forward, I hope staff take a serious look at it, and you can also. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thanks for joining us tonight, and thanks for your presentation. Councillor Elgar asked questions about density. Is this, depending on the final number between bedroom counts and so on, is this 12 to 1,300 people per hectare?
I'd have to go back and look at my report to confirm the math, but that sounds probably reasonable in terms of the overall. And in terms of density, we're looking at 5 times over the gross site area.
All right, thank you for that. Curious, the GE building, is that going to be part of the commercial space?
So that's an interesting one that we're still wrapping our heads around. That building is actually located within the 14-meter setback that's required by MTO. We understand that MTO does not want that building to remain in that 14 meters, so we are going to be working with heritage staff to relocate that or reimagine that building as part of the overall development. And so it makes sense that it could be incorporated as part of the facade in the building, and what the uses are behind that, we'll have to work through it as we go through the details.
Thank you very much. The parking ratio, do you have a ballpark figure at this point in terms of the number of spaces or the number of spaces per unit?
Yeah, so if we, based on the architectural plans that we've produced to date, we're looking at 0.68 spaces per unit, which includes 0.15 spaces that would be shared between visitor and commercial spaces.
And obviously that'll change depending on the final count of 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and so on.
That's correct. Those are based on the current numbers and will change over time as well.
Yep. Councillor Elder asked about the school site. That has not obviously been approved as yet, so that's a hold. That's a on a hold for you at this point in terms of that space.
So the school site is not actually located on the property. It's located adjacent. The school board has provided comments through the initial application saying they'd like to talk to us about the location, their location versus the park, and how operationally things will work and whatnot. And so that's something that we have to talk through with the school board and staff to see where things can be incorporated in for an urban school site.
I understand. In terms of, it's good to see low flow, high efficiency plumbing and car share and EV parking spaces, as well as bike facilities. Are there any other green or environmental items that you're looking at, whether it be district energy, whether it be green building standards, whether it be anything more substantial?
At this point, we're still, again, we're at the OP stage, so we're providing for that, and we want, obviously, the plan put forward by staff to date encourages those items, and obviously, we will incorporate as much of that makes sense and provides the best bang for a buck in terms of the environmental component as well as affordability with regards to those units. You know, these days, a lot of buildings, there's been a lot of technology that's been tested, that's being incorporated in, but we're just not there yet at this stage. We're still drilling down and continue to drill down over time as we bring forward various applications forward. But I will obviously have noted that, and we'll incorporate those further discussions as we move forward through the process and provide those.
Much appreciated. The reason I brought it up is under your sustainability slide, it listed a number of measures to promote sustainability. So that's why I included that. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Mackay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adams, for the first time. Councillor Hazardeel, I'll come to you when the first timers are exhausted.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate you attending. I appreciate all the details you've provided. You provided a one slide that showed a northern aerial shot of the site, and I wanted to ask you about the access points from the various buildings onto that road network and how they would address the streetscape there.
Sure.
And how that would link to what might be happening to the north of the QEW.
Okay. Can go, yep. One.
Yeah, that one shows it. Now, I presume that from that picture that the road is kind of just slapped onto the aerial photo, and so the northern portion doesn't look like it.
Yes, it's a rendering.
It's a rendering, exactly. It's not the final product, obviously, because it looks like it has some kind of weird aerial thing going over some buildings there. That's obviously not going to happen. But what you cannot see there is within your site itself, how exactly the buildings connect to that road space and how people who might be either driving, cycling, or walking would access that road to go north or come from the north to go south or go into the buildings.
So for the arterial, that obviously is an elevated road. So the first access point after crossing the QEW and the South Service Road would be the east-west collector in terms of access from that point. What we're looking at is we've tried to minimize vehicular access along the east-west collector, really create that as a retail street with good retail, pedestrian and bicycle oriented, so that the other access points into the various sites are from South Service Road or the future local roads that will be created, and one at the south end for the arterial, because there is a grade differential. So we're utilizing that grade differential to enter into a lower level easier and to create, again, using the grades as much as possible there. So what we really anticipate is to try to minimize the access points for vehicular and focus those onto the pedestrian and cycling realm as much as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. So I guess my question or my issue that I'd want to consider is the permeability of the site as it pertains to that arterial road to the north, and whether the site is as permeable as it could be with respect to the access to the site from the north and vice versa.
Yeah, I think it's when you're dealing with an overpass condition, it does very much limit what you can do because of the grades, stopping distances and whatnot. So we've worked with BA Group, our traffic consultant on the file, to try to make that as good as possible at this point in time based on where we're at. But I think what that does create is the porosity. Certainly we have porosity east-west into the buildings and from South Service Road from the north. But you're right. I mean, if you're coming over the QEW on that position, you're going to have to turn left or right onto the collector road to then come into the initial sites.
So I wonder
from a vehicular perspective.
Yeah, so I appreciate from a vehicular perspective, the elevations cause that trouble. I would wonder if it would be possible from a pedestrian or cycling perspective to break that up in some fashion to provide access or better access.
That's a great point, and we'll definitely take a look at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask you about the demographics of your prospective? They may not be buyers, they might be renters ultimately, but the people who would live there, do you have any work that you've done with respect to who might be the ultimate people living in the units?
Not at this point.
Age breakdowns or anything like that?
Not at this point in time. We're obviously, as I said, we're far from any type of marketing for the project at all. We're at the official plan stage, so we're a fair ways off. I can tell you that my client is both a developer in terms of rental projects and maintaining and owning those projects, as well as condominium projects. So there will be a mixture of tenure. In terms of the breakdown of age and whatnot of what they're trying to encourage into the facility or into the future development, I can't tell at this point.
Okay, so I understand that council has seen some studies that have shown a discrepancy between the number of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom housing units or 4-bedroom housing units that we have across town, including detached homes, and the demographics of our community in terms of household makeup and the need for additional 1 and 2 bedroom type units. And so while we're asking for the availability of 3-bedroom units within the mix, I'm wondering, who are you trying to house on the site?
Well, at this point, we've designed for 60% 1-bedrooms and 30% 2-bedrooms and 10% 3-bedrooms. So obviously the 3-bedroom units are going to be bigger and obviously have a greater price point. So that will limit who can purchase those ultimately or rent them. But we are looking at obviously that mixture, and that could change over time as we develop the blocks depending on the market conditions.
Okay, and I think I heard you say something about the FSI of the entire site, but I wondered what you've got in terms of unit size ranges, in terms of square footage of the 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms and 3-bedrooms. Have you gone to that level, or is that too much detail?
We haven't gone into that. We've just used average sizes at this point. I'd have to take a look at the architectural plans to confirm, but right now we've just done average sizes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Just some further follow-ups. When we talk about sustainability, have you committed to doing a whole life cycle assessment on your building so that is used as a way to work with a sustainability consultant to deliver the best efforts you can on sustainability? My understanding is they, in fact, can help you save some dollars.
Certainly, my client is always into saving dollars, so I can't say if we do a life cycle assessment or some similar engagement on sustainability, but that is certainly part of the process that we would be working through, and my client has done that in the past as they, again, move through the process closer to construction.
Okay. And my other questions are just around clarity on the density. So did you, and forgive me, I'm a little foggy tonight, I've got a bit of a flu, but what was the FSI that you have on your proposal?
So for the overall site, it's 5.0 on a gross area basis. Obviously, each of the development blocks will have their own density on a net site basis that varies based on the site. So the northwest corner has a net FSI of 8.7. The northeast corner is 9.2, and the southeast block is 10.2 on a net site area basis. So that excludes the roads, excludes the parks, which ultimately all of that is being given up for the development to the public good, both the town and the region, depending on the level of the road. But a significant amount of the road will be given to public purposes, ultimately.
But it's significantly higher than the current draft OPA and our current in full force and effect OP.
So the current OP does not contemplate residential on these lands. That's in effect. And the drafts, the latest one, I believe, it's 4.0 on the north of the east-west collector, and 3.0 on the south.
Well, hopefully we can find a way to find that win-win that you talked about. My other question is around the school site. So the school land site, the one image I saw in some of your application had the school, and then it had the schoolyard. And is that as a result of conversations with the school board?
So we haven't done anything in terms of designing their site. Anything that you may have seen through the comments has been produced by the school board themselves. And we're setting up meetings with them to talk through how this site and their potential site would work together.
Yeah, it is in some of the planning documents that have been submitted, but I like the fact that you've separated it. So there's a schoolyard and the school, so accessibility for others is something that's being considered. And my last question is just around configuration of the towers, and because there's a lot of them, so have you considered a different concept that has some height closer to perhaps the highway, but really steps down and terrace in some of your original designs?
I'd have to go back and take a look at what we looked at as a variety of exercises. But certainly, again, we're here to work with staff and with council on this application. This is our initial application and our thought process. So obviously, we'll work through that overall design matters for all of the blocks as well as the overall site through this process.
Thank you. We look forward to having a conversation with Mr. Reisman.
Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk, would you call the registered delegation? And any others that may have phoned in?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McKay.
Douglas McCurgan.
Mr. McCurgan, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Not sure, can I be heard clearly?
Mr. McCurgan, because you're somewhat soft-spoken, there's a button near you, I think on your left, under the lid, that will raise everything up if that helps you get any closer to the microphone.
Went the wrong way.
There you go.
Okay, is that better?
It is, actually. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm here tonight representing the Trafalgar Chartwell Residents Association, which is my home association, and also We Love Oakville, which TCRA is a member. Can I have the next slide, please? So the two topics I wanted to talk about, one is about the OPA, this private OPA versus the December 2024 town-initiated OPA. They don't align, and big picture, our view is that we must have a single Oakville official plan which applies to the whole of Midtown without exception. And then the other topic are a few quibbles about the actual development proposal. So if I could have the next slide, please. So those first three bullets, I've already talked to the first point, which is an alignment one. The second bullet, both OPAs are aligned in reclassifying this land as urban core. And then the final bullet, there is a misalignment on building heights, but that seems to us to be a secondary matter. The building heights in the end will come out of the FSI issue. So our key issue is to do with density. 5 FSI is proposed for the entire proposal, and the average in the town OPA for the land concerned is 3.7 FSI. The 5 FSI yields 1,046 people per hectare. Councillor Elgar's calculation is a bit higher than that. The 3.7 FSI yields 774 people per hectare. Can I have the next slide, please? Just to put that density, give you a visual way of putting it in context. This chart is a chart that Duncan Callaway used in his Tale of Two Densities delegation on January 27th on the draft OPA. The middle, the blue thing, the blue block there is that represents this proposal. And you may remember him making the point that the town's maximum FSI, if applied to the whole of Midtown, so throughout the entire set of precincts and blocks, there were different FSIs, but if you apply all of those and the maximums that were available for throughout the proposed OPA, that would result in that block just to the left of the blue block. And you may remember Duncan saying that it would be barely achievable. It would be bold, barely achievable. It's a density of 554 residents per hectare. So the proposal is about twice the bold density that the draft OPA's maximum FSI would produce. Next slide, please. These are the quibbles, those are miscellaneous issues. The first three are obvious and important, all of them: traffic congestion, the new QEW crossing, plumbing infrastructure. And we know that they're going to be complex and hard problems to solve. But we expect they'll be solved over time. We actually admire we're very happy to live in this town. It is a well-run town. The region's well-run. So we think those problems will be sorted out eventually. Our key quibble is with respect to the mix of units that some of the councillors have asked about already tonight. The proposed the Planning and Urban Design Report has this quote: "The proposed OPA allows for the development of 6,954 residential units across 16 high-rise towers that feature a range and mix of unit sizes, typologies, and tenures that will diversify the housing stock in the town to reflect contemporary housing needs for smaller households who are seeking smaller and more attainable housing options close to transit." And we think that's the exact opposite of what Oakville needs. We question whether that will yield a livable community. Next slide, please. I wanted to just a word about the park. We have a tendency, it seems to me, in Oakville to keep working on our parks, and over time they become more and more manicured. And I just want to make a plea that we must make sure that this becomes a playground for kids. Last slide, please. So, recap. Our big issue is that this private OPA must be brought into alignment with the town OPA. Oakville must have a single approved master plan for Midtown, which applies without exception to all Midtown. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. McCurgan, for your information. Councillor Elgar has something to detain you. Councillor Elgar?
I'm not trying to detain anybody, Mayor Burton, but with regard to people per hectare, all I did, and maybe it's wrong, but I took the 13,928 people, which I thought would be based on 6,964 dwelling units, which included 10% one bedroom, or 10% three bedroom, 30% two bedroom, and 60% one bedroom. So I used 2 people, and I divided by the total size of the lot, which is 11.05 hectares, and I come up with 1,260 people per hectare, and that does not include any employment. So I think it's basic. I think Councillor Giddings, when he mentioned 12 to 1,300, was exactly right. So we'll see. But I like playing with numbers, and it seems to me that the numbers are not very low. Thank you.
I agree with you, Councillor Elgar. The multiplier you were using of 2 people per unit, housing unit, probably makes more sense than the number that is in the planning document, which is 1.66 units persons per unit. And that's how in the planning document they come up with that smaller number.
I totally agree with you, and I think that is too low based on how many people I see living in units today. Thanks very much.
We agree.
All righty. All right, Council. Who wants to offer the indicated resolution to receive and consider? Councillor Knoll, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being none, Councillor Knoll's motion is successful. We're very near to the end of our work together tonight, Council. I would like to solicit a motion to rise and report to Council. Councillor Longo and Councillor Grant, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that's carried. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on the Consent items 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3, the confidential consent item 5.1, and the public hearing items 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3. Could I have a mover and seconder to adopt the report? Councillor Shia and Councillor O'Meara, thank you. Any objection? There being none, the motion is carried and the report is adopted. Now, does anybody have any new business they'd like to announce? You know, this is the time for emergency congratulatory or condolence statements. Anybody? Anybody at all? Councillor Hazlet-Thiel.
Robert, I'd just like to say congratulations to Councillor Shi and his partner, Councillor Nanda. What a fabulous event Lunar New Year was. You really worked hard. You got the community involved. It was exciting for everybody. Lots of happy faces. So well done again.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure all of us who enjoyed that agree with you on that, and we all extend our thanks to Councillor Nanda and Councillor Shia. I have an announcement. I'm announcing a mayoral direction. This direction is that the CIO will convene a staff task force to develop and report to Council all feasible municipal responses to the tariff attack on Canada by the President of the United States. This task force report will identify barriers and solutions for local procurement by the town of goods and services presently sourced from the U.S., identify contracts with U.S. suppliers and termination options, and identify costs and funding sources for each measure. And yes, I'm aware that a 30-day reprieve has been granted to Canada and Mexico, but I don't see anything wrong with being prepared for the possibility of that collapsing, given the somewhat temperamental behavior of the man in the White House. So that'll be posted on the website in due course. And now I would solicit a motion to consider and read the bylaws. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Adams, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, and the bylaws, as listed in the agenda, are considered read and passed. And that completes our work together tonight. It's been terrific working with you, and I look forward to our next opportunity to work for the people of Oakville. And good night.